You've learned a lot on your journey from Cambridge Analytica to now. As we head into this election, it is now 7 days away. What are the biggest issues on your mind and the concerns that still remain?
One of the biggest issues that I'm thinking about moment to moment is that right now we are in a bit of a legal quandary, which is that when inappropriate content is put onto Facebook, we right now are not able to hold either the content producer, the individual who has the account on Facebook, nor the platform itself responsible. So we need to figure out whether we are going to regulate platforms like Facebook as publishers and therefore hold them liable for what they are publishing, or we need to have identity checks so that when inappropriate content is loaded onto Facebook, that we can actually find out who the author of that content is and hold the individuals responsible. Right now, we don't have the ability to do either one of those.
Now, just in the last few minutes, Facebook has confirmed they've taken down some more ads tied to the Trump campaign, calling on voters to vote today. Facebook telling us in a statement, as we made clear in our public communications and directly to campaigns, we prohibit ads that say vote today without additional context or clarity. This is in addition to stopping new political ads, to, cracking down on things like QAnon and Holocaust denials and registering 4.4 million voters. Do you think Facebook has done enough as the election approaches, especially given what happened in 2016?
I definitely don't think they've done enough. It is too little, too late. But obviously, this problem is vast, and every little bit does count. Now, the main problem right now is that Facebook is deciding to censor certain content, or it's deciding to flag certain content as inappropriate or against their particular policies. And instead, we are only having a couple thousand people that are making these decisions for billions of people around the world. Facebook needs to make a much bigger investment on the amount of staff and the amount of technology and the amount of funding that they are putting into protecting our users, especially in a controversial election year. We still don't have transparency on what data is being used about us, how we are being targeted, and whether or not something is disinformation. We cannot be sure whether or not a particular ad is being shown to us for a reason that we belong to a particular group. We have a certain racial background and age demographic, and that is one of the biggest problems because we are very susceptible these days when we spend nearly all waking hours on our devices, much more susceptible to this targeting than we ever have been before.
Now, there's a lot of misinformation that's still allowed on Facebook and Twitter despite the rules, and I wonder if there's a certain kind of okay or considered okay misinformation that you actually think is the most dangerous or harmful.
I think some of the most dangerous content that is proliferating across Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms in the lead up to the election is targeted content that is meant to suppress the vote. Either content that is meant to incite fear, content that is targeted at certain demographic groups specifically because that is meant to lower their interest in participating in the political process or lower their actual belief in democracy and the validity of their actual votes. So this is some of the issues that we're coming across because we do not have that transparency into who is putting this content out, why they are targeting it at particular persons, and then we do not have the digital literacy, the education as individuals to be able to spot fake news and disinformation. And that's specifically why my Own Your Data Foundation is teaching digital literacy across the board, because until we actually know and can spot this type of content and protect ourselves, we're going to be waiting for these platforms to become self-regulating while we slowly work with the new Congress that we have after November 4th to figure out if we can actually get federal data protection legislation and regulation of platforms through.
Now, speaking of voter suppression, we just got some early voting numbers from the U.S. Elections Project. They're saying that early voting has hit 50.2% of total ballots cast in 2016. So already just a week away from the election, more than half of people who voted in 2016 have already cast their ballots. You have been crisscrossing the country. You've been talking to lawmakers. You've got some new folks on the ballot. Do you think that lawmakers and the folks who stand to win on November 3rd really understand technology and the issues surrounding data that are so important to you?
That is one of my biggest problems with the choices that we have been given in this election, is that neither of the two main party candidates actually had technology policy in their platform. It was only about 2 months ago, even, that I started to see a Facebook policy in their platforms, but not wider technology. And I really believe that we need to be able to protect innovation and entrepreneurship in this country, especially to be able to rebuild our economy after this pandemic shutdown. But we also need to figure out exactly how we are going to regulate these technologies so that although we allow our economy to regrow and we allow entrepreneurs to innovate to solve a lot of our biggest problems, we are still able to protect our citizens. We're able to protect users on some of the most popular platforms in this country. And right now, we are not anywhere close to national data protection legislation or real national regulation of these platforms. So, as I said in the beginning of our conversation, I think we really need to determine whether we are going to hold platforms accountable or we are going to hold the individuals that publish on these platforms accountable. We need to choose either or and regulate and legislate accordingly.